right, hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. This video is going to be a little recap of the energies that I've been tuning into, some messages that I've received from my higher guidance team. And so this will include a little inflow share. We'll see where we're going to go with this. One of the things that I talk about a lot and that I've written about a lot is that we are making adjustments in our reality. We're making adjustments in our bodies. We're making adjustments in our skin suits, our bodies, our reality. And these adjustments can feel very foreign. We're in a space right now where I get asked quite frequently, when is this going to get better? Or those of us that are sensitive are feeling these massive influxes of energy coming from our guidance team, coming from the earth, up from the earth, coming down from the sun, coming from other planetary alignments. And my answer is whenever it's ready to stop, and that's probably going to be never. We are in a continuous flow of momentum and movement. The difference is we were held within a more dense space, which didn't feel as spacious. And so we were kept within, let's say I drew my beautiful artwork, this little bubble right here of reality. Within that bubble of reality, we felt certain things, we experienced different things, we had understandings of certain concepts, we felt connected to certain things, and that was where we were. And within that cocoon or bubble, I'm going to call it a subset of reality, we may call it a matrix of reality, we grew. And what's I've been shown is that we've maximized our potential within that bubble. So as we've maximized within that, it becomes uncomfortable. It doesn't fit us anymore because we become too big for this bubble. These other subsets of reality were accessible to some and available to some, but not necessarily to everyone based on their own belief systems, vibration, and frequency. And by the way, everything I'm sharing is totally based on my own perspective. So there will be some that watch and maybe think it works in a different way, and that's okay too. Part of what I'm always guided to share with everyone is we are each an individual, unique perspective, holding a different perception of our reality based on our own individual experiences. And that's part of the gift that we all offer one another and that we then send back to source. So if you picture source as expanding out into all of these particles, or as my friends like to call it, pixels, we expand out into all these colors and pixels, and each of those holds a holographic imprint of our perhaps original soul spark or pieces of us or whatever we want to label it as. And then we vibrate we make certain arrangements like a snowflake or a pattern, and that becomes a harmonic. So we each have a signature harmonic, so to speak. That this signature harmonic then creates a version of us, of our reality. And then we are, from within that matrix of reality, we feel, see, and experience more based on our previous experiences. And this is just one aspect of many different aspects of looking at how our reality works. So what's happened is, from my perspective, is we've gotten too big for our britches. We've expanded out so much that the molecular components that once kept us inside of a particular field also have to shift and vibrate. Or we could look at that the other way around. The space around us has shifted, therefore we must expand out in order to fill that space. And I'm hearing, we're too big for our britches, we're too big for our bridges. We've essentially created this bridge that is reaching past what it was that we had thought we could reach past before. So this is all a little esoteric, I realize, and this is just based on my own perspective and perception of what's happening to us. But what I was shown is this was us, and this was our field. We have a subset bubble here and a subset bubble here. Some people might refer to those as dimensions. I'm going to use a lot of this interchangeably, even though I'm sure there are linear definitions. This is a dimension, and this is a subset, and this is a matrix, and this looks like this, and this looks like that. And we can compartmentalize those definitions, those defining matrices, as much as we want to, or as much as we think we want to. But I'm encouraged for just this presentation to let all that go and just play. And if we were just to think of ourselves being encased in this beautiful plasma of light, and this light is a harmonic, and we are a harmonic, and we are a sound, a conduction of energy, of electricity, in which we send out frequencies, and we absorb frequencies. And we are a vibrating snowflake of particles, electricity, magnetism, and information. In formation as a human in a skin suit, walking on planet Earth. Just hearing, walking on the moon. Whew. Little police there. Okay, so what I was shown is now we've a couple different ways of looking at it. This, we've branched out, and now we're expanding out into these other subsets or bubbles of reality. But I was also shown that now all of that has dissolved, and we are this. So now we're bigger. If we think of the earth as a big, right, a huge body of energy that holds all of these humans in her own skin suit. So we are a body. In our skin suit, we hold all kinds of cells and bacteria and plasma and fascia that is all interconnected and communicating with each other. So we are a planet within ourselves. So we hold all of that, and then we hold consciousness, and we connect through our soul spark that's inside of us, but it's beyond all of that, right? So it's as within, so without. The earth is the same in essence. The earth is a skin suit of dirt and air and water, just like we are. The same chemical compounds that are within the earth are inside of our bodies. Crystals, our bones, are crystal lattice work, or a skeletal structure that kind of keeps everything in alignment. The fascia is the mycelium network that moves through the entire planet, that connects everything together, and it's an electrical frequency and energy that is constantly supporting the skeletal system and all of the organs and all of the cells, and so on and so forth. The water in our body, the blood, the plasma. So we look at the earth and the iron and the elements and the copper and everything, as within, so without. So the earth is expanding. The space in which the reality is expanding, right? We've been told that for years. And so too are we. So we are making the appropriate adjustments, essentially, to become bigger energetically. So this is just like the woo-woo kind of version that I've been shown. What I keep being shown is why it's so important to go within. And I want to kind of go into that briefly. And I just want to, on a very human level, I just want to say that there's a lot of people that are asking for help. They're asking for their guides. They're asking for synchronicity. And if we aren't asking for that, then we're not necessarily utilizing our ability to ask and receive. And what I've been shown is that time and time again, I'll have a session with someone or just even a conversation, and I'll recognize that this person has so much going on in their field that they're completely unaware of. We all do that from time to time. We're not necessarily aware when our guides are trying to communicate with us. It takes practice. And even with practice, sometimes it takes more practice. So many people are getting the help that they are asking for, but because they don't, well, let me go backwards. A lot of people aren't asking for it. They're asking why this isn't working out for them, or they're asking why they feel the way they feel, but they're not necessarily reaching outside of themselves or going within themselves to ask to open to the fullness of the universe, the multiverse, the omniverse, whatever we want to label it as, and the you inverse, the you in this version of yourself. So if we're not asking, then how can we open to receive what it is that we may not even be aware of that we have available to receive? And it can just be as simple as asking to be shown a sign, or for our guides to communicate with us, or to connect with the earth. It's very simple, but we forget because we're so caught up in following the mainstream of, you do this, this is what time you are there to be, this is what you talk about, these are the people that you're going to interact with today, and this is how you should interact with them. And we're taught the old mechanics of interacting with our reality, our matrix, our bubble. But what I've been shown is that bubble has dissolved. And now all of these other subsets, or bubbles within bubbles within bubbles, which are subsets, layers of reality, have opened and become available for our usage. I'm just hearing a bigger package has been downloaded. We've upgraded. We've upgraded our internet service, our internet fascia service. And we are in this period of adjusting to what that feels like. We don't necessarily recognize it yet because we are used to doing and interacting and communicating in a certain way with our environment, with our bodies, with our human brothers and sisters. So what I'm really being called to remind everybody is to share is that we may not be getting the answers in the traditional sense. We may not be getting the communication in the same way that we're expecting it. So we're really being invited to let go of our expectations of what that communication, relationship, synchronicity looks like. We are getting gifts from people in our lives that we never would have expected, or synchronicities that are lining up for us that we're not necessarily aware of because we're not looking for them. We may say, universe, I want abundance, and then we wonder why we don't win the lottery. When the universe is giving us abundance by dropping a friend in our lap who is full of gifts and resources that then line us up with opportunity to find abundance in a different way than we've ever tried to find abundance before. And I don't just mean in the form of money or wealth. Abundance isn't just about finances. In fact, I'm being called to play with the word finance. So let's just for a moment. So funny, I always like to play with the etymology, right? So we've got funds, right? Make one's peace, settle a matter. So this is the etymology of finance, right? So it's to make fine. Well, what is fine? Right? So let's play with this a little bit. Many people are looking for abundance and they're expecting it with this tunnel vision, and then it doesn't show up for them in the way that they want it to show up. And therefore they don't think in that left brain analytical space that what they're asking for is coming to them. And then they get frustrated. And we've all been there, right? Where many of us have. I think I have before, and I still have those moments But I've found more and more that the abundance that comes into my reality is in friendship. It's in that connection, the resource that is being sent to me from source, through source, as source, a point connection in which I harmonize with another person, with an idea, with a thought that then pulls me or pushes me in this constant influctuation and excitation, right? It's exciting, it's stirring, it stirs the senses. That is the abundance that then creates the momentum and the creativity that allows abundance in all areas to flow into our lives, whether it be financial, whether it be love, whether it be health, whatever it might be. So getting out of the idea or tunnel vision of this is what it should look like. And what we're being called to do sometimes is to step outside of our box, our little bubble, and now we're in a bigger bubble. So what's happened is there's more people in that bubble. There's more patterns, or we could say, if you look at a crystal lattice work, there's more availability and access points. If we allow ourselves to open to that, to trust and place one foot in front of the other in the knowingness that we are being supported in ways that we never have necessarily been able to feel supported in before, because everything is different now. And that's the hardest thing that a lot of people are having. It's like this, it's this discomfort of, well, this is what I know, so I'm going to still base this new reality on what I know. But what I keep being shown is, but the new reality isn't based on what we think we know. So it's this very strange dichotomy. And so we're making the adjustment. So the energies that are coming in, what I wanted to share on that note, let me just pause while I draw this little picture. So what I've been shown is, here's our rainbow. Okay, so we have this rainbow all around us, and picture that us being encased inside of this rainbow. And some people refer to it as a light body. Now I am using these words again interchangeably. I'm always guided by my team, my higher self, to really not lock myself into a verbal dialogue box where nothing can be used interchangeably, to recognize that language is a living complexity. It's a living dialogue with source. And so if we're constantly sending signals back to source, and then source is responding by giving us more signals, but we're only basing it on the old signals that we've received and the paradigms that we have been boxed ourselves into, then those other signals are just going to bounce off. We're not going to absorb them because we've already put ourselves inside of, let's say, this little pink box, which is lovely. And by the way, these colors don't have a particular order. I'm just drawing colors. So we then go, okay, well, this reality is based on this pink zone. But in actuality, we're getting messages from out here in the blue zone. But because we're so encased within this and we feel so comfortable in it, those messages then bounce back. So that's what I've been shown. Messages incoming. And if we're too full, it just, usually it would bounce back and it goes just out to here. And that's it. That's where it goes. Or my little arrow. Instead of sending it back out to here in this constant exchange between this expansiveness that we are. I was also shown that essentially because we are expanding out, I'm going to do a video on this with a recap of the writing that I did that broke this down into more scientific terms, even though I'm only explaining it to the best of my ability. Any polymaths out there, feel free to go in and translate what it is that I'm talking about. But essentially in this video, I'm just going to stick with the keep it simple starseed stuff. There's waves in between here. So this is all waves. All of these colors are waves and harmonics. And essentially what's happened is and this is again, my own perspective, it's not that we've broken the waves, we've expanded out. So we're slipping in between these waves. Slip, sliding away. We're slipping in between them. And we're allowing for the word that was coming through was spatial. All right, I'll just have to save that for my next video because I was writing about spatial phonetics, spatial differentiation, vectorization, row and column vectors. So what's happening is science based, it's evolution, if we want to call it that, or expansion out into a different harmonic level. So that's another thing is if you think of each of these bubbles within the light body as dimensions or subsets or bubble within a bubble within a bubble, we could also think of those as different harmonics. So each of those holds different harmonics, and we are essentially moving through and weaving. So what I was shown is this is a bridge that we're creating. We've created this bridge, and now we're connected to these other points in time, in reality, in harmonics. And it really comes from us creating a sound. So we're being bathed in sound. This air that's around us isn't solid, right? Neither are our bodies from one perspective, right? Everything has this wave. It's all electricity and it's all spirals, right? So we're creating through our vibration of bliss, and I'm going back to my message, that's the original message, which is go within. When we go within, we create a synaptic firing, from what my guides have shown me, in our brain. Those synapses create portals to other extensions of ourself. You could think of it as an extension cord. This extension cord is reaching out and plugging into these other subsets in the spatial harmonics or spatial phonetics, I can't remember, of reality. And we then fill that space with our creation, what it is that we're creating or bringing into our awareness. And that's just one level of what we're doing, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. We could also look at it. So I'm going to just that's kind of what I'm seeing, merging all of those, weaving them together. But what I'm also seeing is that we're creating these synapses. And as we create the synapses, let's say it's here. I'll pause this just for a moment. I'm sure I'm not doing a very great job of describing this because this isn't obviously what I've studied as far as the brain and the neurological pathways in the brain. But let's just play for a moment. Let's say this is a synapse. I don't know if that's backwards, but it's a synapse and it's firing. And let's say it's a thought. We have this pervasive thought that keeps firing. It sends out a signal, okay? And whereas before, those signals would go out and ping off these other, let's call them subsets of realities, or let's say aspects of ourselves, or we could say different dimensions, or we could say nodes in the network or the matrix of the soul, whatever we want to label it as for this particular video. Basically, what I was shown is now, because of our frequency and vibration, so before those would go out and let's say there was one right here, it would connect in with that particular one, right? That looks like a Charlie Brown drawing, but then that bridged and became more connected. And then that would then create part of this. Now that would become part of this bubble. Well, all these ones that were way out there never quite anchored in, right? We bridged, but then we didn't, the frequency wasn't sustainable, right? We didn't hold it long enough. The pattern was just little pings. But now what I'm seeing is, and also I was also shown, let's say this guy, this what's it? Is it Linus, the one with all the carries the blanket around? Anyways, let's say that this is a little bit heavy. It kind of blocked our pathways to some of the higher domains, we'll call them. But now we're signaling our fire, our star fire, our sun is our star, but also our inner fire is signaling stronger. And ironically, as within, so without, in case you haven't noticed, our sun is firing a lot more regularly, a lot more energetically. It's shifted its frequency, and so have we. What's going on outside of us is a direct reflection of what's going on inside of us. So we're tuning in, and this is allowing us to then bridge. And we're creating even more, I am not very good at drawing backwards, even more connection points. So this is literally changing our map. This is a map of reality. We're dissolving some of these old ones, and then we're essentially creating this energetic space that then merges with these other ones. This is happening from what my guides have shown me inside of our bodies. It's happening astrologically with connections to other places in space. And it's also happening inside of the earth. So if you see these, well, what does that kind of look like? Obviously, beginning the seed of life, right? Moving into the flower of life, which is creation. Therefore, more things are being created. Therefore, we will create from within that space a different reality, just from going within and changing how often, how frequently our synapses in our brain are charging and firing, and how long we're able to hold that connection, which is sustainability. And Dan Winters, who I always quote, well, not that I can quote him because I listen to him and I get what he's saying, but I don't know that I could ever feed it back to you guys in the way that he says it. But essentially, it's the long wave, right? It's a sustainable long wave recognition pattern that is then that it then allows us to sustain the new reality. And I know this is kind of a weird thing to wrap the brain around, all of it from one perspective. The simplest way of looking at it is by going within, we change our brain patterns. If we do that and we stabilize it through our heart, it creates a stronger pattern recognition in which we are then able to recognize within ourselves when we are having a synchronicity, when we're having an aha, when we should or shouldn't eat something that's maybe no longer good for us, maybe when we should not say something that we would usually react to. Instead, we feel and we allow ourselves to change the frequency and therefore our response to whatever triggers we're having in our environment. And this is where real change happens, because if each individual is doing this and recognizing this, therefore the way in which we interact with each other completely changes. Therefore, issues and certain things that used to be relevant in, let's say, a conversation no longer hold the same charge, because we have changed our frequency, and therefore the things that we are attracted to or that are attracted to us also change. And for those of us who are on that path of heart-centered awareness and enlightenment and all of those things that come with it, this is where we are the change, we become the change we want to see in the world. And then we start to see that in the world because it's reflected back to us through our own perception, our own perceptual vision. And it's something that is difficult for someone who is in a place of disbelief or in a place of complete left brain logical analyzation to necessarily see. But it's, again, not necessary. We don't always see first. We see with our inner eye, our own inner recognition before we see that reflection of self from one perspective. There's lots of different ways of looking at it. Okay. So this also, right, seed of life, So then we become the seeders. We are seeding our new reality through this constant synaptical exchange with source, with our environment, and we keep getting these signals back and forth, which creates more signals and more access points. Because if we were only going back and forth and pinging back to one thing, now we're pinging back and forth to a bigger frame, and I'm using a little bit of computer science lingo, I think, as well. So this creates stability because now these are all connected. It's no longer just a bridge. It's now a foundational three-part trifold flame, however you want to look at it. This also is happening as within, so without. So this is happening inside of the earth. Therefore, many of the elements that are inside the earth and around us are responding to our signal, which is our signa, our spiral, our golden frequency of creating these seeds, which have now been birthed into formation. And this also has to do with, like I was saying, elements in the earth are being birthed, because elements inside of us are being birthed and accessed and created. Therefore, so too is the earth. And we will then begin to see, as a reflection of that shift. So we're going to begin to learn about even more elements that were previously unknown or undiscovered, or should I say, we were unable to connect to. They've been there the whole time, or technology, or recognition of science, whatever it might be. This becomes more available to us because now we have the ability to sustain that observation, connection, realization, etc. Okay, so that's what I was shown in meditation. And again, I'll do a video where I break down the writings on what that looks like with contravariant vectors and all kinds of fun things that I'm still figuring out. We'll always be learning, right? So as we expand out, what I've been shown is before, the space in between was unstable. And so this may not have been able to be expressed because it wasn't stable enough to sustain itself. But the more of us that are creating this charge and longitudinal coherence, or we could call it a covalent bond, the more that this becomes accessible for everyone, not just us, because we could call it, I don't know if we want to call it the 100th monkey effect, but it's kind of similar to that. But what I'm sensing is, or what I'm seeing is that it stimulates our senses and we begin to feel, some of us are feeling very edgy. And this is a different video. I want to maybe talk about the edginess, living on the edge. We are no longer necessarily feeling like our old pathways are sustaining us. This could take me into a whole other video, and I'll just touch on that briefly. So some of us are feeling that our old pathways are no longer sustaining us, meaning where we were going, where we've been, our connection points, people that we might have, and this has been happening for a lot of people for quite some time now, but we're going to begin to see that more and more. So we are searching out, looking for ways in which we can sustain ourselves, ways in which we can harness this energy. And I'm really being called again to remind everybody, go back within. Because the more that we ask ourselves this question, we ask for help from source, from our higher self, and from those of us that are our brothers and sisters in our soul group that are part of the same molecular configuration, perhaps, that lights our spark. And it doesn't all have to be the same. What I'm talking about may not really feel expansive for someone who's just into Hollywood and celebrities. Maybe fashion lights their spark, and maybe connecting with someone who is creating sustainable, planet happy fashion is their cup of tea, and they feel inspired by it. They feel blissful and happy, and they get to talk about it, and they get to figure out, how can I create a clothing line that's sustainable? And also, how can I express that clothing line, let's say on the runway, that is also from the heart and sustainable and doesn't fit this old paradigm of hierarchy and control? That's a whole other plethora. That's a subset. That's a bubble of reality, right? The fashion world, that's a bubble of reality that I don't exist or play within, but some people do. And that's their call. Their call is to get in there and create wearability. What are we wearing? How is what we are wearing influencing our structure of reality? How can we better express ourselves as the light body that we really are? And so anybody that wants to run with that, maybe we create a light body clothing line with sustainable fabric and give back to Mother Earth, and create, fashion areas where people can co-create and cross-reference ideas and not feel as if it's this I am better than thou, more of that connectedness. And this is what it's all about. We start to come together within these collaborative, co-creative worlds. But this sustainability is, for example, in the fashion world, also has to reference science, and also has to reference environmental issues, and also has to reference a way in which they are advertising, or a way in which, I'm trying to explain how everything's connected here. I'm using that as an example. They would have to potentially, how are they going to treat their employees? How are the models that are wearing the clothing going to interact with their customers? Is this truly done in a sustainable way, or is it just look sustainable? And that's the other subset of reality. That would be an old version of reality. Because those of us that are becoming more and more aware, we feel it. We feel if it's authentic, or if it's just looks authentic, right? And that's a whole other can of worms. And I honor whoever's going to be diving into that one. Sorry, it makes me think of Rose, somebody that I know that's in the fashion world that I follow on Instagram from a long time ago. Hopefully, I'm sure she's made a positive impact in the world with all that. But anyways, so having said that, who and what we are becoming, we are really just being called to be very present and allow ourselves, the words that my guides continually use over and over again is allow, allow, allow. Let us allow ourselves, feel ourselves, create. And so some of the things that we're being invited to allow may feel edgy at times, beyond our comfort zone. And yet, this was our comfort zone before in this bubble, and now we've expanded out into these other zones. And so this is going to require some of us to feel a little uncomfortable. And that's something that maybe we'll go into in another video. So I hope that helped maybe explain some of the things that maybe some of us are feeling. This is how reality looks for me. Again, I'm going to do a video with a lot of the science and mathematical words that I use that talk about the structure of our reality. But in the meantime, we're really being called to go back to a place of inner tranquility. It doesn't mean that we're always going to be tranquil. It just means that we are the boat, essentially. I'm seeing a boat on an ocean, and that we are the ka and the ba. We are the boat, and we are essentially commanding our vessel in a very different way. And what I hear when I say commanding is coming into, come into this new version of ourselves. And many of us have really invited in these higher frequencies, and it just feels kind of scary at times. It feels awkward. It feels uncomfortable, and that's okay. We're really having a massive impact on the structure and matrix of creation. We just don't necessarily see it yet. So in love and light, guys, until the next video, namaste.